and welcome to the Wellness with Juanita podcast. I'm your host, Juanita Nagai, an American living in Japan for 20 years. I've gone through some massive life changes and crises in my 20 years here. At its bleakest, I felt very isolated, alone, and helpless in the face of what was happening. I relied on alcohol and cigarettes to get through it the best I knew how, which worked until it didn't, and everything fell apart. I made it through with a little help from my friends, a fledgling mindfulness practice, and learning how to become my own strongest ally. I quit drinking and smoking, worked my way through my grief, found ways to forgive, created new connections, and started a regular exercise, meditation, and self-care routine. I've also become a national board certified health and wellness coach along the way, and developed a desire and passion to help others on their own personal journeys. This podcast is all about change, growth, healing yourself, learning how to get back up after life kicks you down, and exploring mindfulness and self-compassion as incredible tools available to each and every one of us to do just that. Welcome to the Wellness with Juanita podcast. I'm your host, Juanita Nagai. And today I am joined by a very special guest, the lovely Michelle Pietrzak-Wegner. She is a licensed somatic-based psychotherapist, certified international yoga therapist, and certified Shinrin-yoku, or forest bathing guide, with a 20-year background in teaching and facilitating yoga, mindfulness, and trauma-informed somatic practices that are rooted in teaching people how to slow down, connect to sensation, and restore their relationship with their body and their inner selves. While she runs a small somatic-based psychotherapy private practice known as Embodied Therapy, she also promotes methods for slowing down, connecting to nature, and living intentionally through her broader community work called the Slow Life Experience. I am so excited to have you join me today, Michelle. Thank you for being here.
I am equally excited to be here with you, Juanita, because your dedication to wellness and all things around that, including mindfulness. And we just talked briefly before we got on about exciting things about being embodied. And so I just feel lucky that we were connected by a mutual friend of ours. I just have to shout out to Ebony to say thank you for connecting us. I love that we have communities that are kind of reaching out like tentacles and making sure that we come together as women and as people who are like-minded. So very excited to be here.
Yes, absolutely. I know. Ebony told me months and months ago, there's this wonderful woman named Michelle and she does forest bathing in Tokyo. And I really think she'd be great to have on your podcast. And then eventually we got together in the end.
Here we are.
Yeah. So since you are based in Tokyo, and I was wondering if to start with, you could just kind of give my listeners a little bit of your story of how you came to be in Japan, came to be in Tokyo.
Yeah. Let's see. How do I begin that? My love affair with Japan actually happened probably about 20 years ago when I actually arrived in Sapporo as a jet. And I only hung into that program for 1 year. And then I hightailed back to the United States to just continue doing some career work. But the love affair didn't end, as it often does with so many of us who get bit. And my husband actually is the one who got us here. He's an American and he does some contract work for the U.S. military. So we entered into life in Okinawa. How long ago was that now? 11 plus years ago, we were in Okinawa. So his job with the U.S. military brought us over, and we spent eight plus years in Okinawa. And that's where I did most of my mental health work while I was in my graduate degree with the U.S. military and work as a somatic psychologist, somatic psychotherapist with the Air Force and as well as the U.S. Naval Hospital down there. And then we came up to, just as a job transfer for him, we came up to Tokyo about 3.5 years ago. Huge life transition. And you might say just a move in Japan, but not really. It's a move away from Okinawa culture and a move into big city, big city compared to island life. So that was a bit of a transition, but some of it quite familiar. And for me, in that weather and land is 4 hard seasons here. And that's my language because I hail from Minnesota in the US. And so, although I love island life, it was something I needed to learn. I never understood it before, and now being in a big city, there's parts of it that feel like home, and parts of it that still feel foreign to me. But that's generally how I got here.
Yeah, well, that's great. And talk about a total like two different worlds, though, for sure. I mean, Okinawa and Tokyo, it's literally two different cultures, right? And so that's a really great segue. I'm really curious about how you access all of these things that you are so interested in, that are so near and dear to you. Things like forest bathing in like the urban jungle of Tokyo seems kind of like a paradox. How did you get into that, or how did you start introducing the slow life experience to Tokyoites?
Yeah. Wow. How did that start? I mean, all things start by being born in me. Let's just go with that. So, I think my love of nature, my love of being with, and let me clarify that. My love of nature isn't necessarily big nature, big mountains, going for the biggest hike, snowboarding down the fastest hill. My love of nature is actually the bugs that crawl through the sidewalk, or the weeds that come up through the cracks, or the interesting textures in trees as I walk by. And that comes from, I grew up in a city in Minneapolis, but I spent all of my summers in rural Wisconsin, in my grandmother's just rural life. And so I really got a love for macro nature, just getting into the tight little spots around that. And I think that was a gift that somehow popped up in my life, because being in the city, one can easily say, especially in Tokyo, we don't have any nature here. There's no nature to be had in Tokyo. It's all city, which is not true. We have a lot of beautiful nature here. So Shinrin-yoku was something I had always been kind of curious about. There's a part of my graduate work in somatic psychology that also has a component called eco-psychology. And that's about being connected to nature through our mental health and our mental well-being. So when Shinrin-yoku came around my back door, front door, and I heard about it here in Japan, I just got really curious and thought, how can I add this as a tool to help people slow down? And I think essentially my curiosity is, how do I create community for myself? So it's a bit selfish. And how do I find people I can play with in the forest? But also, how is this a really useful tool to help people have a gateway to easy slowing down, easy ways of being present?
Yeah.
So that started the journey. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's beautiful. And I love that. And I think that it's so important, because we just are not geared towards slowing down. Like modern day world, especially in Tokyo, be busy, be productive, modern late stage consumerist capitalism culture. Like, we need to be doing something to further the advancement of our career, or even our household, or our chores. We're always moving. Right. So just in general, this concept of slowing down and just watching the bugs crawl across the ground, watching the weeds come up in the cracks. I personally think fundamentally that is what connects us to our humanity, right? Our most ancient kind of feral feelings is to get back to nature, to create community, to be really vibing out with our kind of like ancestral caveman feelings or whatever. But we've just moved so far away from that we need to intentionally and actively choose to do those kinds of things.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's right. Yeah.
That's amazing. I know you do the forest bathing. Are there other kinds of aspects of the slow life experience that you try to introduce this kind of slowing down concept to people?
Yeah, such a great question. So yeah, basically what I kind of work with under the slow life experiences is something I just call slow practices. That whole journey started because I've been teaching yoga for 20 years. And even in the yoga world, those who maybe have a yoga background or have practiced yoga, there's fast yoga, there's slow yoga. I mean, we have all kinds of
Mm.
pacings and speeds to anything we do in life. And I was kind of known as the one who was always promoting the slowest yoga out there, which was called yin yoga. So all things that I get attracted to tend to be something that requires a slowness, a tenderness, a quietness, a way to kind of slip underneath the radar of this fast paced life. And so, yes, slow practices underneath the slow life experience include things like yoga and qigong and creative practices. I'm a watercolorist and what we call a slow stitcher for anybody who's an embroider. The practice of slow stitching and mindful, intuitive stitching is something I do as my artwork. And so these kinds of things I promote within myself first. Everything I put out to the world is promoted in me first. And then oftentimes have, opportunity to do that through small experiences, workshops, or retreats.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yeah, yeah. And I have found that to be the case as well. Everything that I share with clients or workshop participants, these are all things that, I have practiced or I have learned to be of value and personally have brought me so much
Yeah.
help or solace or whatever it is. It really doesn't work unless you believe and embody and practice these things yourself first. Right. Right. Yeah.
Right, right,
Yeah.
right. Yeah, yeah. Wouldn't feel familiar enough to us, would it?
Yeah. And so I'm curious, if you don't mind me asking, you mentioned that you have been teaching yoga for 20 years, which is amazing. Yoga has become part of my personal practice, but it's kind of still following along from videos on YouTube in my living room. And as I slowly experience and experiment that way, it feels very appropriate and comfortable for me right now. But that's only been a few years. So I'm curious, how did was it yoga that kind of brought you into this world, or how did you kind of come into that? I don't even know what
Yeah,
to call it, that wellness space or
it's a great word for it, actually. The wellness space, and for me, something slower. Yeah, I yoga was the first sort of doorway, and that came to be through adversity. I was diagnosed with cancer in my late 20s and really did an overhaul of my entire life at that age, which is a pretty young age to do something that way. But I was a bit stubborn. I didn't want to use Western medicine, although I did end up leaning into them for several surgeries. In the end, I had a supportive husband who we just really looked at what's the lifestyle that we could create that isn't creating stress internally and stress externally to levels that are unbearable. I mean, obviously, stress is normal to some degree.
right.
But I wasn't tolerating it, so to speak. So as I was moving through that journey, and that was from 28 to age 30, so it was 2 years of working through what it meant to have cancer in my body, and then to come into what would be considered remission. I grasped hold of yoga for a variety of reasons. One is, to be really frank, I hate to exercise. So I knew that exercise was really an important component. And this felt like something easy to do. But, we all know, those of us who've done yoga, that it's not necessarily easy. I had such a stereotype around it. But what I ended up finding was something quite amazing, which was ways to slow myself, ways to find safety, ways to stop the world around me from feeling uncontrollable. Even though it still was uncontrollable, I felt more in my body and in my experience. And this is where sensation in my body started to be a language that I started to understand and started to trust. And that language helped me make discerning choices around my health, discerning choices around what serves me, what depletes me. And so that just kept building over the years. And so yoga was less about aesthetics for me and more about an internal experience, about sensation and choice. And that's what drove my personal practice and then led me later down the line to slower practices of yoga, because when you teach people the same thing, you can't do it in a fast-paced yoga environment because you don't give people enough time to learn the language of sensation and discernment or choice. So that's kind of how all that came together.
That is beautiful. And the first thing that comes up for me, I did not realize that you were diagnosed with cancer at such a young age, and that was kind of the entry point. It makes me think of years ago, one of the teachers or some speaker I was listening to late at night said, though, that, not many of us come to mindfulness or this wellness space, as it were, because we are feeling like a happy, shiny person, right? You don't generally turn to spiritual practices or somatic practices or any kind of meditative, mindful practice if you're feeling great. It's usually some kind of pain or some kind of grief, something that is bringing us to that space. But then from there, so much can open up. I mean, I know that is definitely been my experience as well. If I had not been at such a dark night of the soul space, I never would have thought to kind of, reach out and take that first step, which is what opened the crack of my door and propelled me down the path that I have taken since then. I really appreciate you sharing that with us. And also, I love that you found yoga as this way to really connect with your physical bodily. I mean, that is what somatic means, right? With our physical bodily sensations. And then you took it kind of even down another notch. Like you took it even slower. And that's really amazing. I think that's really interesting because I think everyone does have kind of different ideas of like what yoga is, or, like hot yoga is kind of like the housewife thing to do in Japan, or, but it really isn't just for aesthetics, and it wasn't just for exercise, and it wasn't just because it was trendy or cool. It really connected you on a much deeper level. And I think that is one of the most amazing happy side effects of yoga. It's almost like we've kind of lost it or forgotten it again in this kind of modern day culture that we live in. And I wonder what you think about that. I mean, it sounds like you are so very well attuned now to kind of your physical sense, your physical body. What does that mean for you, or what does that look like for you?
If you'd have asked that question to me 15 years ago, the answer I think would have been much different and probably rooted in theory. I think forgetting a lot of what I was taught and dropping into experience is where the richness is. And, I can't really comment for others, but as a sweeping culture across the globe, and how you see yoga has developed, or has it become an industry, so to speak. This is not a lost art, what I'm describing. It's not missing component, but it's the minority of what it is. It's the sort of the lesser part of it. But sitting from the seat that I have now, many people have to come into the hot, sweaty struggle, perhaps the trendy part of it. Perhaps, everybody enters into their own, in their own way into yoga. Some it's spiritual, and then some it's like physical, and some it's, for a mental reason, or some it's for health reasons. And I just feel incredibly grateful to sit here now and answer this question, which is probably not answering it. I'm actually taking my own experience here, but I realize that 20 years of being with that practice, and sometimes being really angry with the practice because of the industry, coming into it through my own authentic way, has allowed it to be a tool for me. Sometimes I don't even want to call it yoga. I just want to call it the practice or my practice, because it's about just, me joining in with my body and listening to what's present in there. And I don't have a right to say that the yoga industry should look like that practice, because there's some really, even the sweaty trend of moms doing yoga in Japan has its own benefits to it. So it's hard to compare, right?
I think that I am noticing a little judging mind that I have, put out there saying like hot yoga is a trendy thing.
But you're right. It is actually, it is. And I'll join your judgy mind in that. I really, for a long time, had a real opposition to it. First of all, my body does not like hot yoga. It just cannot go there. Right. So it doesn't like anything hot. Let's be realistic. Not even hot Tokyo summers, not hot Japan summers. But what we are averted to, I think, what we often sort of, take pause to say, so I wonder how the others can do it, or should I be doing it? Or why am I not doing it? Or I don't like it, or all of that normal conversation comes up around that. And I've been there too. But now I get to sort of sit back and relish in what I have made my own, I guess, is what the bottom line of what I'm saying is. And I don't even know if that's like a thing that's teachable. I just know that I really cherish it for myself.
Yeah. Well, I think that passion though, and that energy is what you can share with your students or with your clients or with others, I guess, that it has become so meaningful and it has become such an important tool in your life in so many different ways. I think that's what I was kind of trying to hint at a bit too, that, as a health and wellness coach who really had no idea what she was getting herself into before kind of going into this industry, as it were, because it's a huge multi-billion-dollar industry across the world.
Right.
And again, I came to it in a very personal need, right? Personal journey kind of a way. And, it was like, oh my gosh, these practices or this new perspective has truly been life-changing. And I know that it can really help other people. So I want to become certified, study this, like learn how I can actually share what has become really important to me for people who are ready, that want to learn or want to experience it. At the same time, then there's Instagram and there's all of these kind of things that are part of it, that it's like, yeah, I'm not in this for the marketing, and I'm not in this for the kind of the showiness of it, but because it really truly can profoundly change the way that you approach your life, that you experience life.
Yeah.
And it's funny, I feel like if I could name or articulate exactly what has shifted or what has changed for me, then I would be a billionaire, right? But the only thing that kind of comes to me is just that I just feel so much better. It's just like on a deeply human, what it means to be alive level. It feels way better to be taking care of myself than what I was doing previously, right? It's just like, and it's just as simple and difficult as that. I feel a lot better. And I know there are a lot of people that are out there that are suffering and stressed out and stuck in their minds and could benefit from learning how to embody some of these practices or change their thinking. Yeah,
I agree. Yep. Self-care, and that I just loved hearing from you that and I think people need to hear people say this, is that when I take care of myself, you said, when I take care of myself, it feels so much better than when I wasn't taking care of myself. And I realized that that's not rocket science.
Right.
And that's not right. But the slow path to do that is that even some small drops in the bucket make a difference. And that what you just stated out loud didn't happen just in one night. You didn't just go from like one day of taking absolutely no care of yourself and the next day taking all the care of yourself in the world and you were healed, right?
Right.
It,
Yeah.
it's time, but even the smallest of things, the sweetest little action towards yourself where you begin to befriend parts of yourself or befriend who you are and treat yourself as if you are your own friend, even the smallest way, and that means a slower buttered toast in the morning, that's the start to creating sort of self-investment is kind of what I kind of describe self-care as a way of investing in yourself. But yeah, I love that you just, you stated the obvious, but it's so important for other people to hear that because I can't begin to take care of myself. I have all these people I'm in charge of, all these things I have to do, but it starts really small, and small makes a difference.
Well, and I think you're highlighting something that definitely underpins everything I believe in and all the work that I do is that it doesn't have to be hard. And, I think I understand, especially as, a professional working mother of young children. And again, just a modern day human, right? There's a lot of demands on us and there's only 24 hours in the day and all of that. But as you said, something as simple as just slowing it down, just a tiny little twist of the dial, enjoying that buttered toast in the morning, or just turning off the TV or the devices when you have that coffee and toast in the morning, right? Like little intentional moves like that really do make a difference and they really do add up. I think that is a huge point, that it doesn't have to be hard.
Yes.
It only ever works. Like it only ever happens if we start really small. And I think the other piece that people kind of maybe get frustrated with or lose sight of, or maybe just don't understand about the process in general is that, and then to keep doing the work, right? To keep enjoying the buttered toast every morning that you remember to do so, and not beat yourself up about it when you don't. So yeah. It's not overnight. It's not, but it doesn't have to be really, really hard, and it doesn't have to be really, really expensive. And you really can make huge changes in your life, right? Yeah. So I'm curious. All right. So I alluded to earlier that the universe is presenting me with a lot of embodied, somatic kind of information right now, like practices and things I'm listening to or programs that I'm participating in.
Yeah.
And then I was talking to you today as well. So I'm just like, wow, this is kind of cosmic, honestly, right? And but for me, this is getting kind of personal here, though. I have always lived above the neck. I have always I prided myself on being very smart and intellectual, and there's all kinds of stuff with my hometown was all about sports. So I wanted to distance myself even from all things physical and bodily.
Yeah.
And it's as I keep going further and further down my path, it's like, oh man, you gotta physically feel what's going on in your body, right? And it's blowing my mind. Kind of. It's like, oh man. And like, so what does that mean though, right? So I do my yoga, and I think that's a wonderful way for me to start processing that. But I just wonder, when you work with anyone, are they already pretty aware of this kind of somatic thing? Like, is it just me, or is it something that you kind of have to ease them into understanding or kind of visiting as something new? Does that make sense?
It's a beautiful question. Yeah, it makes a heck of a lot of sense. And Let me start by just saying you are not alone. I think the majority of our world culture lives from the neck up, and we are lauded for our ability to be intelligent, to speak articulately, to strategize, to plan, to do all things cognitive. And even in many of our industries, we strive to be there for a variety of different reasons. Like I'll take the medical industry. If you have a surgeon working on you, you do want them to be highly intelligent and perhaps a little bit cut off from their body because they have to do something that's pretty invasive. And that kind of means they need to stay in a mindset that keeps them very focused. And there's a lot of jobs out there that require that. And when I work with people, they come on a variety of, like, if we think of it as a spectrum, they come on a variety of that spectrum in terms of where they are in relation to their own body and what kind of culture they grew up in which their caregivers also were in their body or not in their body. And even religion has a huge impact on whether or not the cultural mindset is about, do we embrace our body or is our body a thing of shame? So, there's a whole bunch working against us. And I've just scratched the surface just with a few of those. So when I work with people, slow life experience hat kind of lets people come as they are and just lets them perhaps be intellectual the whole time they're in the forest or doing yoga, or be in their body to the best of my invitation. And so it's more of a haphazard, does it happen under slow life? But when I'm in my therapist mode, when I'm in embodied therapy and I work with people in somatic approaches, I'm really kind of assessing in the first couple of sessions where their language skills are at when working with their body. And what do they think about this body that's been carrying them around for years? How do they relate to it? How do they take care of it? How do they feel sensation in it? And lots of times people don't have the language of sensation. And so, and that's okay. There's nothing lesser about a person who doesn't have the language of sensation. It's fairly easy. It's very simple to learn. I won't say easy. Easy can be quite difficult, but it's fairly simple. And we just start adding in contrived sensation to be able to build that language up. And contrived sensation is literally like, putting rhythm in the body, or finding a little bit of shake or movement, or feeling what an object feels like a sandbag in the lap, or bare feet on the floor. All of these are very simple, mundane ways of feeling sensation, but takes time to build that vocabulary, that somatic vocabulary in people.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, just thinking about, being even barefoot, and I'm thinking of growing up in Michigan and being barefoot in the grass. Oof. And man, I don't know the last time I've been barefoot in like actual real grass living in Japan. But again, it's another kind of, really basic human experience of connecting with the earth. I've been thinking about music, and over the weekend I went to a local festival with my children, and the final stage performance was the drums, the Japanese taiko drums, and I love them too. I love the taiko performances, and so watching them perform, but also watching the spectators watch, and I just was struck that this rhythmic, the beating of the drums and the sitting around the fire and like literally communing and connecting, this is what we are meant to do as people, as humans, right? And to dance and move our bodies. And so on a personal level, I've been thinking about that and kind of playing around with how that makes me feel. Like, can I feel into those sensations in my body? I'm trying to kind of almost not teach myself, but remember or relearn that physical vocabulary. And then, trying to put that into words is really difficult though, right? Because it's such a different experience. I think that we have all of these phrases like trust your gut and stuff like that. We often forget that there's a reason we have that phrase, and that
Mhm.
really, really, when we are feeling danger or something, our body is warning us. We can
Mhm.
really feel it in our gut. And it's fascinating to me. Even as I'm talking to you, I'm getting all the tingles and the warm fuzzies and the feelings of connection and being heard and like, okay, she's
Yeah.
on the same page as me,
Yeah.
right? It's so
Yeah.
cool.
Juanita, I have so much I wanted to react to what you just said. There's like 3 or 4 things that you just said in that beautiful experience of, first of all, Michigan and bare feet in grass. And my vision, and it's my vision from what you said, was you as a child. And what's interesting about that is that most of us, where we're living like this from here on up in our adulthood, we didn't live like that as children.
Yeah.
Even if our parents were not in their bodies, as kids we're just so playful. And I think about, sometimes I watch them now when kids are like sitting in water or snow for a long period of time. They don't care. They're fine. They feel all those senses and it's totally fine. Right. That playfulness is kind of what we're looking to draw back, and a playfulness brings us there. And wow, when you were talking about the taiko drums, I could feel the resonant in my chest and my bones when you are in the presence of drumming. And you are absolutely right. We are tribally programmed. We're meant to be in community. And not all of us, but many of us came in our history and our ancestors from tribal based communities. And that may have some level of percussion or some level of singing or some level of musicality that came with it. And that's kind of programmed in our bone and in our fascial tissue. So recalling that back when you're in the midst of it, even if it's not your original culture, like with taiko drums, it really brings about this sense of reverberation in the body. And that rhythm actually tones our vagal tone, in our nervous system, and brings us into, a state of safety, a state of regulation. And so there's reason why we gravitate towards those kinds of sounds and practices, especially in community. And yeah, I just really loved hearing you talk about taiko, because I could just feel it in my own body, that sense of rhythm. And it's even thinking about it actually has a response, a somatic response. Just like you said right now, somatic response to connection feels also so good, right?
Yeah, yeah. And I also loved when they were introducing the little local group, they said that it's comprised of people from elementary school to into their 70s. And
Yeah,
it was awesome.
yeah,
It really was. It was little kids and they were taking turns with the little old ladies and everything in between. And I thought, this is one of the things I do love about Japan, and just
yeah,
a just a wonderful little snippet of
yeah,
summer in Japan. It was really great, but
yeah.
I've just really kind of been on that trip lately of, all right, well, so how does that feel? Like, like when I noticed, just trying to kind of play and experiment with that. And as you said, it's a remembering, because as children,
Right.
that is how we do. I mean, our brains are literally still developing. We don't have
That's
all of this baggage that the adults
right.
on us has.
Yeah.
I used to work for a long time with young children. So watching them, their tactile play and all of that, it's like, oh yeah, that is who we are. That is how we first communicate.
Yeah.
And we kind of forget about it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. We do.
Yeah. Turning to the therapy hat, only because I'm currently reading The Body Keeps the Score, and I'm nearing the end, and he's talking about these different techniques and different practices that he has found to be so effective in treating PTSD or people with trauma histories. And I love that mainstream maybe slowly, but surely is recognizing,
Yeah.
like you said at the beginning, it's not like yoga's anything new. This has been practiced for thousands of years, but starting to understand that, no, really, this is hugely important and intricately involved with how we actually heal
Yeah.
and grow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Have you always practiced somatic therapy, or did you kind of start off in another mode and evolve, or?
It's a great question. I've always practiced somatic therapy. When I went back for my master's degree, I had been teaching yoga and had eventually done a larger based program, which is in training to be a yoga therapist. And those programs usually run, take people about 1 to 3 years to work with people just using yoga therapy to do one-on-one appointments. And so that work of teaching yoga and doing yoga therapy, eventually in tandem with so many psychotherapists, they eventually were saying, Michelle, just go back and get your graduate degree, for crying out loud, and just be the full package to that, because they were full and there wasn't always the ability to be able to refer back and forth. And so I did, after some research, to see who was teaching somatic based therapy. And to be honest, it's still not super prevalent. I think there are approximately 6 programs in the US that specialize in somatic therapy. I went to Prescott College, which is a small little social justice private college in Arizona, and specifically did studies in somatic based therapy. For me, I was just bringing my body right along. It was the only language I really knew, which I have to be careful of sometimes, because as your experience that you just shared, Juanita, is that sometimes people come in and they're like, I think I need this because I've read it, but I don't know what it is and I don't know how to do it. And so I'm steeped in it. It's kind of my language, but I have to step out of that. And it's like a math teacher who's really maybe, and I'm not saying I'm brilliant, I'm just saying that I've had this language for a while, but a math teacher who's probably really brilliant at calculus, but somebody comes along and says, just teach me the basics of math, and really needs to have the language to bring it into somebody who understands the beginner skills around that. Because I also was a beginner at one point. So it's really having the ability to work with somebody at any level with their body. So yeah, somatic has always been a part of the journey for me. And I'm happy about that. I don't think I could have done a traditional psychotherapy based program just rooted in cognitive behavioral therapy. It just probably wouldn't resonate with me, and I wouldn't be able to be a really good therapist in that modality.
Right. Well, I firmly believe when we are passionate about what we're doing, that is aligning with our higher purpose and what we're here to do. So it's wonderful that you found that and that it all kind of combined and coalesced into, somatic therapy, and also being able to offer these practices to the lay person as well through the slow life experience. That's really great.
Slow life experience for me, I just wanted to add to that, is a bit of a cheat for me, Juanita. It's like my creative playground. It's where I really get to go off and really play and experience and just kind of come up with programming that feels like ways to have fun in slowing down. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what we need, right? I mean, I really believe that. And not only just slowing down, but recognizing that laughter and play and joy is really important. And life is not meant to be this slow trudge till you die, right? I mean, that's really what makes life worth living. And it's not selfish, and it's not silly to spend time and energy in those areas. I think one of my, actually a couple different of the kind of mindfulness courses that I've taken over the years, they kind of end with this celebration of joy and how to keep those positive emotions and that positive side of it the backbone of your practice. Because without that, it is so easy to feel overwhelmed and succumb to despair and everything. So it's really not toxic positivity, not slapping a happy face
Right.
on everything, but
Right. That's right.
recognizing that those positive emotions are also very important to our human experience. I was actually coloring yesterday. My oldest child, she was at volleyball practice, and my son was happily playing, and I got out the markers and I was just coloring and listening to music.
Love
But
it.
I was also noticing in my mind that voice of, you should go do this real quick. It wasn't even, I think I have progressed enough, as it were, that I thought, no, this is important. This is what I'm doing right now. It's Sunday morning. Just go for it. But there was kind of like, oh, you could hop up and do this. And I'm like, no,
Yeah.
you are slowing down and you are coloring and you're listening to music. But it is honestly, it's like a struggle to kind of get ourselves to do those activities. Even
Yeah.
as a wellness coach, it's just like the mind is always saying, hey, you should be doing this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. It's a struggle. And I think it's normal that it's a struggle for us as adults, because, the reality is you probably did have some responsible things that probably needed to get done by the end of your weekend. And so how do you, manage that? But how beautiful that you just took a moment to push back at it for a little bit. And there's the compromise, right? Just a half an hour longer, right? Or an hour longer. And then you'll get to those things. And I think that's the balance that we all have in life is, when we want to do something playful, like color and listen to music, the adult part of ourselves says, what are you doing? Right. And then the childlike part really, really wants to do it. But the adult part usually wins out, doesn't it? So it's that's the self-care practice we talked about earlier, is just learning a little bit as how do I challenge that just a little bit further and do something that is out of my norm. And I may not be able to do it for 3-4 hours, but I can do it for maybe 30 minutes. And I think that's the key, is like, same with people when they come to the forest and do forest bathing. I think sometimes they might be a little held back, and that would be understandable. Let's just walk the trail and look at the things rather than actually hug a tree. And that might be advanced practice for some people, is hugging a tree. It's like a little out of the comfort zone, but you would have done it when you were 5, no problem. So it's just giving a little challenge to the adult mind and the adult part that really wants things to sort of look adult-like, and letting the child part of you just sort of come to the surface and give it a little room every now and then.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. That is a beautiful place. I know I didn't prepare you for this, and apologies for that. But
Okay.
at the end of each podcast episode, I like to leave the listeners with a takeaway. So sometimes it's a question, sometimes it's a reflection, sometimes it's a little practice, but something that they can take with them and try on their own or think about on their own. So I wonder, not to put you on the spot, but I wonder if you could think of a little takeaway to share with my listeners today.
Yeah, let's see, a takeaway. Well, just off the cuff as it come to me. Here's a takeaway. As I look into my screen, I see this leaf back here, or some leaves back here. I suspect that your listeners will come across some leaf, grass, or plant, either in their home or out in their street, or at some point in the next 24 hours. If you can, I invite you to stop and take a look at that one leaf that catches your eye, and let your finger trace whatever patterns are on that leaf. And, as you do that, you might feel the lines or the textures, and all you're doing is taking one finger and tracing it. And if you don't want anybody to see you, then just take that leaf, if it's on the sidewalk, and take it with you and do it later, right? You don't have to do it in front of anybody. And for those of you, in case there are no leaves around, equally as beautiful and as a leaf is the palm of your hand. And so if you take time to just take and look and trace and feel that sensation of your finger just moving through the lines in your hand, and perhaps the shape, just slowing down to feel the sense of tracing. And so I say, just take that with you, and I will tell you nothing that could or would happen. Instead, notice what does happen for you.
I love it. I love that. What a beautiful reminder. And again, universe doing its synchronicity thing. I
Yeah.
was playing with just the sensations of, your fingers on
Yeah.
your opposite palms,
Yeah.
just noticing what that's like.
Yeah.
Yeah, love it. Thank you so much, Michelle. That
Mm,
is a wonderful takeaway. And I think that's a wonderful place to wrap up our conversation for today.
great.
Before we go, actually, Michelle, please do a shameless plug. Do you have social media accounts or a website or any place that people can find you?
Yes, yes, yes. So for the slow life experience, when I wear that hat, you can visit theslowlifeexperience.com. So if you run all that together, that's under the www, theslowlifeexperience.com. And then you will also find slow life experience, slow underscore life underscore experience in Instagram. So you'll find all that slow life good stuff there. And then embodied therapy, my other hat, which is my private practice as a therapist, only a website for that. And if you look up embodied-therapy.com, you'll find my website there.
Wonderful, wonderful. I will put the links to all of that in the
Great.
show notes of today's
Thank
episode.
you.
And I always love to hear feedback. So if you have any comments or questions or want to let me know what you thought of today's episode, I would love to hear you. You can reach out to me via my DMs or my email address, also all in the show notes. But until next time, thank you so much for listening and take care.
Oh, thank you so much, Juanita.